because we have the ultimate contrarian. That is Peter versus the ultimate idealist. Idealist, you'll take it? Okay, which is Giacomo, moderated by the top Austrian economist podcaster. Try saying that after a few beers. Okay, this is the first fight night of our day today. I'm very excited to set up this debate format. We do have a debate format, fantastic. So Stephan, I guess you're going to stand here. We're going to have Peter and Giacomo. Beautiful. Okay, now my preamble. When the block subsidy, when it goes to zero, will transaction fees actually be enough to pay the miners? Or will the network collapse under its own weight? So to debate the fate of the time chain, we have the man who finds the bugs, the man who defends the philosophy, and the moderator who knows where the bodies are buried. Sorry, I've gone a bit too far with this one, haven't I? Either way, I'm very excited to announce the stage this morning, the host of the Stephan Livera podcast, and the guy who has moderated more Bitcoin debates than anyone on Earth. So, Stephan Livera, come to the stage. The floor is yours. Enjoy your debate. Cheers, Stephan.
Very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe. So, we did this last year, but we're doing it again. So let's go, guys. So Giacomo and Peter, let's go. I think everybody knows you, but I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, give them a round of applause. Giacomo, the director of Plan B Network and famous Bitcoin speaker and educator and online shitposter. And Peter Todd, a shitposter himself also, but known for Libra Relay and being a cryptochromancer and not being Satoshi. So let's get to it. So it's the infamous debate. We're doing it again. We did this last year, but this time is for real, isn't it? So let's have an opening statement.
This is the last time.
So Giacomo, do you want to take us away with an opening statement?
Yes. So if you look at the recording of last year Plan B Forum here in San Salvador and even the one in Lugano, you will find other debates about this topic. And I think I made it very clear over the years that there is no security budget issue. That's a circular argument, because if people need on-chain finality, they will spend fees in order to ensure on-chain finality. And the only scenario where the market doesn't provide this buying pressure, guys, this is the same thing. I cannot do it. I cannot do it. Peter, let you please defend it, and I will do the food.
I've always wanted to be Giacomo.
Okay. All right, so we're going to swap sides. Okay, let's go. We're going to swap sides. Now, they're actually going to take each other's
Production
sides.
crew is going to hate us, but whatever.
Bitcoin is going to die. Fees are too low. People are not buying block space. That means that miners will not have incentives to create blocks. That means the reorgs will be very easy. Even if the economy suddenly needs faster on-chain confirmation, the time will not be enough for the system to readapt. If you have a very, very low hash rate, it cannot be adjusted immediately just because you need on-chain confirmation. Bitcoin must be ready for traumatic events, and in case of traumatic events that need on-chain scalability, like the collapse of Lightning hubs, you need a fast reactive system. Bitcoin is not that, because the difficulty adjustment is such that it will take a lot to recreate this kind of strong economic guarantee. So we are doomed, Peter. There is no way around. You should just admit it.
No. I think, first of all, let's go look at the block subsidy. I mean, remember, halving every 4 years. We got 2 more years to another halving or so on. But the real question is, what is the block reward in terms of actual value? Now, that's really measured in, like burgers or US dollars or something. I mean, US dollars are pretty valuable, you wouldn't want me to steal one. And that can keep doubling for a really long time. So first I just want to establish, this is not any kind of problem that could come anytime soon. What's Bitcoin right now? 100,000? Pretty sure it's 100,000, so you might be grimacing a little. But it can go to 200, it can go to 400, it can go to 800. This can keep going for a long time, because Bitcoin's still kind of small. I mean, how many people are in this audience? I don't even have the VIP section set up. We can keep doubling a lot. We just need to go out there, do more conferences, and get more people in to keep this block subsidy up. Now, secondly, we can go argue about transaction fees. And I think people are going to keep using Bitcoin and keep wanting to use Bitcoin. A big part of it being things like Lightning means so many transactions can be done with so few transactions. I mean, all right, show of hands. How many people here have used Lightning in the past week? Yeah, basically everyone. You're in El Salvador. I hear US dollars aren't really accepted. So all those transactions in this room really probably collapsed into like 1 or 2 transactions. All this stuff means that you can pay far more money per transaction and it's still affordable.
I find 2 problems with this reasoning. First, you're assuming an economic growth that is already collapsing under our very eyes. The cycle is over. We didn't even went 2x properly, so we cannot keep up now. But Bitcoin is not a technology that we should just use for today. It's a technology that must last 100 years. And when the problem will hit, because the problem will hit, then we will need an adjustment. And the more we wait to actually do something about that, like demurrage or tail issuance or something good like that, the more we wait, the harder it will be to change Bitcoin in order to accommodate to the emergency. The second problem with this idea is that you're assuming that the economic pressure of second layers can somehow aggregate in a systemic way in order to bring pressure to buy block space. But Lightning channels, you cannot really onboard many people on a Lightning channel. Each Lightning channel would just divide the fee for 2 people. So if people, if you just double the economy, is not going to really make any difference. We will need a hypothetical second layer that can aggregate many users, but that doesn't exist.
I mean, surely, I think like somewhere here, because this is a legitimate conference with lots of very high quality technical content, surely there's like 3 or 4 people presenting on technology like, you know, multi-user Lightning channels, ARC, and so on, right? I mean, Plan B is a legit technical conference, I think. Yeah, maybe not? Okay. Well, anyway, it should be. And then you go find out we've got all kinds of ways where you can take one Lightning channel and first of all use it for a very long time. I mean, I personally have channels that have been open for, I don't know, I think 3 years now. Gone and routed like 10, 20x their nominal value in terms of total transactions. And so there's no real limit there. And then secondly, I mean, once people start using things like ARC and so on, surely we can go and really cram more transactions into few on-chain transactions. This seems like a kind of technology I expect to go keep on growing. I mean, Bitcoin itself is an example of a technology you really didn't expect 20 years ago, and it popped up. Lightning, we kind of didn't really know what happened, and it popped up. We should expect more things to come up that solve these kinds of problems, which really makes the question, I mean, why are we here talking about this? Why don't we wait a couple more years?
I think that the point is that Bitcoin must be conservative. And you seem to interpret this conservatism as in don't change the code and just keep things as they are. But I think conservatism means to be prepared to the worst case scenario, even if you are right, and this issue is not urgent or not very important. What is the cost to just fix it before it even presents itself? It's basically 0 cost. I mean, tail emission, yeah, we break this 21 million meme, but do we really care for memes? It's just random Twitter troll trying to create a mythology, a religion over irrelevant technical choices. 21 million, 22 million, 23 million is a little bit like the same. So I think that you are resisting change that can be just used to defend Bitcoin proactively in the name of some weird religious stance.
Well, I mean, we're talking about money here. Money has value because people believe in it. What is this not, if not a big church? We're all up here seeing our disciples go and yammer on and on about the latest sermon about Bitcoin. I mean, this is what gives money value, people's belief in it. Now, yes, people have to believe in something that's sufficiently useful that it's worth the term money. I mean, certainly we can't go believe in open timestamps. I mean, that thing's a pile of bullshit. They even go and occasionally like do meme coins on Solana or something, I hear, or whatever, you know, it's terrible. But Bitcoin, the double spend tech works. Well, at least now, maybe in the future it won't, but for now it certainly works. And we gotta double down on our belief in it. Now, on my phone here, I was just at the brand new Bitcoin coffee shop, like day before the conference. And what do they have there? Well, they have a big sign saying something or another coffee. But the part I remember about that sign is the summation equation for the 21 million. If we go and add tail emission, they got to change their sign. All these people have to go change their beliefs. I mean, I know, you're kind of far away, I can't really see, but that looks like that might be a 21 million tattoo. You know? Like, I haven't got one yet because I'm worried that he might go change things. But, you know, like, I'm strongly considering getting that 21 million tattoo. And that's really what belief is, knowing that things aren't going to change on the whims of some technocrats.
Okay, you made a good point. I'm almost giving up on that point of 21 million, but surely there are ways to increase the security budget for safety without touching the total supply. One way could be, for example, to increase the visibility indefinitely. We still stay under the asymptotic 21 million, so we don't have to change our shirts and hats and tattoos, so we save that, but we can still improve that line of reasoning. Because one of the, I like to write blog posts, technical blog posts with a lot of simulations. And once I wrote one blog post, imagine a fixed supply with people losing money over time, and I basically argued that this can become an important deflationary pressure. So at least maybe increasing the visibility could be the very least thing you could do in order to counteract this fact that, when enough Bitcoin gets lost, enough Satoshis get lost, you remain with a bunch of Satoshis that are not divisible on chain anymore. So the simplest things we could do is to hard fork in order to have infinite progressive, like fractional divisibility in Satoshis. At least you can give me that.
Well, I got to give credit to my friend Giacomo here, who's doing a wonderful job going and acting like a guy with a fine arts degree myself and knowing absolutely no math. Because that's a terrible argument. This is like, the pizza arguments. Now, the stronger argument is, maybe you could do some deflationary thing like do a tax. But again, we got to go talk about what Bitcoin is, what Bitcoin's guarantees are. If people start taxing your Bitcoin, does that really mean you want to go have faith in the Bitcoin system? I mean, if the government starts taxing your Bitcoin, maybe you can switch to another government. Although certainly if they all start taxing it, I don't know, maybe you can give up on this thing. But if miners themselves say, we're going to go tax Bitcoin, and you're going to have to pay a tax just to hold your Bitcoin, I mean, that sounds ridiculous. Now, in fairness, we do have a tax on Bitcoin right now, the inflation subsidy, but we've already decided that's going away. I mean, it's the exact inverse of having a tax on earnings to, just have a minor temporary fix in World War II, right? Isn't that the famous story? World War II comes along and say, we're just going to tax income briefly, get ourselves back on the feet. No, in Bitcoin, we've done the opposite, where we've said we have to tax, we are going to get rid of it, and that's that. And we should stay on that.
Well, you're basically assuming that we should incorporate into the identity of Bitcoin all the very quickly choices that Satoshi did. The halving itself is a problem. It's a discontinuity. Every 4 years, you have this kind of cut in half reward situation for miners, which is actually very abrupt. It doesn't give the market the time to adjust. And since the market is a very low margin, competitive one, the mining one, it's actually a discontinuity. We may think that we already survived a few halving cycles and now we know how it goes. But actually, that's not true. We did survive the first halving cycles that were actually a nothing burger. Now we are going to the real ones, and this could be discontinuity that proved fatal. So maybe what we can do is to undo BIP 42, and a compromise could be that for now, Bitcoin is going to go to zero inflation. But in a few thousand years, we discover another Bitcoin mine, and that goes on forever. So at least we could avoid fixing the feature that Satoshi put inside Bitcoin to fix this problem long term.
I mean, look, I do admit this is an interesting idea. Now, I got to point out that particular BIP, it was published on April 1st of a certain year, so that might give you a sense of the sort of technical flavor of it. But it did fix a real problem, depending on what kind of behavior compilers had. But the fundamental issue there is, now, look, I think we should go and look to our heroes, should follow in their footsteps. But the problem is, Hal Finney, yes, he did get his head frozen in preparation for the next round of Bitcoin in 2,000 years, when he will, of course, be defrosted and he will continue on his life collecting the next, probably becoming a Bitcoin miner, right? I mean, obviously. But how much space do we really have to freeze all our heads? That's kind of impractical. I think we need a solution sooner than this. But the obvious solution here is, again, transaction fees. Why don't you think transaction fees will get higher? Why can't they just pay for this stuff? Why can't the market pay for this?
So Moderator, I think the idea was very funny for the first 50 minutes. I think that the amount of time allocated...
All right, so let me throw out a few ideas, and we can discuss those. So let's explore another idea. What if we're talking about controversial ideas? What about a block size reduction? Could that also drive transaction fees higher, such that transaction fees replace to make up for that difference? What do you guys think?
What about if we increase block demand by, say, allowing JPEGs of monkey butts into the chain?
That's the next debate.
Another debate. We're going to leave that one. I mean, block size considerations. What do you guys think?
I don't know which side I'm defending anymore, so I would just go with it and I would just tell what I think. I think that the problem with this thinking, I am in favor of a block size reduction because I think that the block size, I'm for real now, because I think that block size increase was motivated by fake emergency, fake sense of urgency, and we see that block space is basically wasted right now, so I'm in favor. But that said, it doesn't really fix incentives, because it's like when shitcoiners try to increase the value by reducing the supply. We burn some shitcoin, and that will increase scarcity. Scarcity doesn't work that way. Scarcity works in a way in which there is a credible inelasticity of supply regarding with demand. If you have an arbitrary reduction of supply just to boost demand artificially, usually that doesn't happen. If you think you are a Bitcoin user and you are not going to need an on-chain transaction because you don't need it, because second layers are so good that you just need one settlement every few years or something. Is the fact that we're going to reduce the block size changing your preference in any way and now you need it? Maybe there may be some element of that, like everything which is scarce can create a psychological effect in which you want to get it first. But the reality is that in a realistic case, it will not change anything. So reducing the block size, I think it would be good, because in general, the full node synchronization is low. It's growing at a pace which is higher than the growth of bandwidth, more than storage, but it's not really connected to the point of incentives, in my opinion. And I'm being serious.
Where are you at on that, Peter?
I mean, this is like a Luke Jr. suggestion. It's one of those things which has enormous social costs and coordination costs and really plays against people's direct incentives. It's very hard to go organize people to do a whole bunch of stuff just to go and have like less chain capacity when you have this counter narrative that we need more chain capacity for, say, Lightning to go and like scale. Now, maybe there's some nuance there, but you're going against all these narratives for something that, I don't know, what are we going to do? Maybe cut it in half? Like, fees go up and down by more than a doubling all the time, just to pure fluctuations. And it's just not that interesting as a solution. Also, like, what are you going to do? Like, cut it in half and then say, oh, well, I don't know, maybe security isn't good enough. Let's cut it in half again. Or let's somehow undo the previous one. Oh, wait, soft fork. Do we wait for it to expire? Like, it's just a very messy solution. I think it's a nice solution if you want to go and make a bunch of tweets about it. And you want to do the Luke Jr. style, like raise the masses, but it's not a great solution. Also, a point there to make is that the reason why the block size battle was fought wasn't so much because 1 megabyte was a perfect number, but rather because not changing things is the way to go. Solve that problem with other layers rather than trying to micromanage it.
Well, but my point here, even if we're a little bit off topic, my point here is that we did change things with the discount. The block has been increased under the assumption that fees were already unsustainable for an average on-chain user. So there was a fake emergency, there was a sense of changing things, and we did a change. To some degree, it was a compromise between two factions, a compromise that did fail because it was not accepted by the other faction that forked away anyway. And now we are left with a very large supply of block space. Again, I'm not really arguing that security will be impacted in a beneficial way, but I'm arguing that maybe elaborating on mistakes could be also a good cultural move in order to discuss future changes to Bitcoin. Maybe sometimes we made changes that were not useful.
Well, I mean, the thing I'd say there is, I wouldn't say this, I wouldn't describe it as a fake emergency. It was a very real emergency, but it was a political emergency. And SegWit happening to have a block size increase in it was a solution to a political emergency, first and foremost. Secondarily, there's some technical arguments there, but first and foremost, it's you play state the miners enough that we start getting to the point where Lightning's developed.
Okay, yeah, so I guess there is the proposal, again, I'm not in favor of this, but James and Lopp floated this idea of Goldilocks, I believe at Plan B Lugano last year, or maybe the year before. I guess that also gets into that same idea of the Goldilocks idea of like raising or lowering the block size. But of course, that has its own issues. But where are you guys at on that, or how would you critique that idea?
I mean, Monero has a scheme that allows the block size to adjust, but the way they've done it is inherently tied to tail emission because they have to go sacrifice rewards to increase block size. And yeah, or maybe the game theory that's kind of neat in Monero. Clearly, if we're going to do it that way, well, you got to have tail emission anyway. So we kind of what's the point there? And then secondly, I would say, in a scheme like that, you still have a potential of getting into block size debate kind of weirdness. In particular, because miners can do weird things like pad out blocks to try to make the block size get bigger and bigger, and then make arguments around that. And it's just an ugly thing that doesn't have great incentives.
Anything you wanted to add there? I've got another.
Yeah. No, about that, I think that there are two discussions. One is the specific change. So if we wanted to open the can of worms of block size again, there is one point which is what would be the best solution. I agree with Peter that the best solution will not be Monero style. I think that one of the most elegant solutions, to my humble understanding, was proposed by Manny Rosenfield a few years ago, and it was elastic block size, which is based on the lower fee rate in the block. And that was interesting because many of the block size changes proposal are trying to project current situation into the unknown future. So, for example, technology will go up. But we know that, for example, if you make that assumption in Santorini Island 3000 before Christ, or even in the Middle Ages, that's not always true. You can have a social situation in which storage costs go up and technology goes down because of some war breaking the internet infrastructure or something. So we should not assume a projection of the growth of technology into the future. And Manny's idea of elastic block size was nice because it was adjusting bidirectionally, a little bit like the difficulty adjustment in the mining hash difficulty. That said, I think that there is the most basic point is probably better not to open the kind of worms unless we do that for a specific reason. For example, I would be in favor of a block size reduction by removal of the witness discount in favor of cross-input secret aggregation, because cross-input secret aggregation can bring the same hypothetic benefit that the witness discount was proposed to bring in terms of incentive to reduce the UTXO set. So that's interesting, but if we keep the block as it is forever, we can also just move the entire problem to second layers, which is what Peter argued for before, and that's probably a more conservative solution long term.
So I guess what many of us thought would be like with Lightning coming out, that everyone would be using that, and then I guess ironically with like all the spam and stuff, that was what drove maybe adoption of Lightning and of other things like Liquid and Arc and Spark and things. So have the engineers scaled too well? What do you guys think?
Sorry, so you say have the engineers?
Have the engineers, working on Bitcoin and on L2s, have they scaled too well?
I think it's very hard to avoid, under that definition, scaling too well, because the moment you invent something like Lightning, there's definitely situations where you go use it, where it's kind of a binary, like either things have an on-chain footprint, or certain classes of things don't have an on-chain footprint, and you can do as many as you want. I mean, I can certainly go on, I can open an Ostra client, and I can tip every single one of my friends 1 Satoshi all day long, and it'll just never show up on the chain at all. It does scale that well. Arc has similar properties, different but similar. Things like Cashew, of course, I mean, they're trusted, so they do great. And also people made the point that when it comes to Bitcoin trading, exchanges do far more economically relevant transactions than the chain itself. Because when I buy and sell Bitcoin from you, that is a real economic transaction. You really got something, I really got something. But the vast majority of that never goes on chain. So, and this is why, of course, I've always argued that we're probably better off with something where the money flowing to miners ultimately comes out of value. Now, there's definitely ways where this can be circumvented itself. I mean, maybe things like RGB catch on with, say, USDT being the main way people move money around. In that case, there is no mechanism to force people to give their USDT to miners. You know, it's not going to happen. But in the meantime, as long as Bitcoin is the store of value people are storing, there is a possibility there.
Yeah, I think that this is true. We may be overestimating sometimes the role of Lightning into the reduction of on-chain block space demand. Because one thing is, yes, now I don't do on-chain transactions since I do them very, very rarely these days. Even to pay for a car, I use Lightning. I was forced to, but I did. And so the idea is that that's true, but there are other elements. One element is that the idea that people were using Bitcoin to pay each other constantly was a little bit inflated in itself. It was an overinflated expectation. Bitcoin is still mostly a store of value as a main use case in many, many markets. It is used for international payment, for remittancy, for privacy online, and it's used at conferences to pay for pupusas. But except for that, it's still mostly an investment thing. And even that investment thing is being eaten by TradFi, taking over the role with ETFs and treasury companies. So the store of value use case of Bitcoin is being currently cannibalized a bit by this kind of fiduciary trust-based solutions that don't need much blockchain space, while the one person, one UTXO ideal will need still a lot of block space. On the other hand, as Peter said, USDT and stable coins are also cannibalizing the payment use, and so far, until something like RGB is actually used by USDT, so far the best use case for RGB is to use shitcoin because they are so centralized, they are efficient, but so decentralized that they offer legal protection to the issuer. So it's very hard to compete with that, and the only solution, in my opinion, will be to see what happens when we have the real challenge to our trust model, which is one, Coinbase going bankrupt and bringing down all the ETFs and most of the treasury companies. That would be very nice to see. And second, dollar hyperinflating so that the concept of stablecoin doesn't even exist anymore. In that case, we will probably go to actually see the truth of the on-chain demand or off-chain demand for SAT transactions.
And to the point, even with the L2s, Lightning, Arc, and Spark, and Liquid, and whatever else, even just like if we just thought about the old school kind of DCA and withdrawal use case, like just if you look at the numbers, it might be like 200 million on-chain transactions a year, something like that, in that range. So it doesn't take that many users who are just buying and withdrawing, even if they're doing buying and withdrawal every month, even that would be enough to kind of fill out the chain. Yeah, no?
The real problem is nitty-gritty technical things like reorg risks and all, and that's kind of very game theoretical. It's harder to explain to an audience. I mean, clearly, of course, Giacomo wasn't smart enough to take my position there and do this properly.
I tried my best.
I reviewed your talk last year. Clearly, you didn't listen well enough. But on the flip side, that it definitely is possible that we find that in practice those risks don't really exist that much, and we do remain strong enough that Bitcoin just doesn't get attacked by smaller actors to the point where Bitcoin's big enough that you end up with government protection. And there isn't actually much of a risk from the very big actors that a lot of chain security really defends against. Now, that's not a very satisfying outcome if you're really like a Bitcoin game theory maxi hardcore, but that's a very likely outcome. It's very likely, even if Bitcoin doesn't work perfectly, it will still work anyway.
I think that among all the different solutions that Peter mentioned and you mentioned it as well, like Spark, Arc, Cashew, and all of these other layers, one is particularly interesting in this regard, which is Arc, because a Lightning channel and an Arc are like scaling two different aspects of Bitcoin. This was also in a very good paper by Peter in Viareggio a few years ago. A Lightning channel batches transaction over time. So basically, few entities, like two entities, they will establish a channel, and then they will batch years worth of transactions into one closing, one opening. Arc is the other way around. Arc needs, in order to get to a good security, which is superior to state chain, Arc needs one on-chain confirmation per, basically, let's say per block or less, but still, they need frequent confirmation, but they can batch many users, let's say in space dimension together. So while a Lightning channel can actually make the on-chain space demand disappear for a while, Arc will still guarantee at least the request for, let's say, hypothetically, 1 transaction per block. So there could be the case.
It's not really a lot, though. Like 1 per block is not really enough to fill it out.
It's not enough. It's not enough.
Depends on how many ARC ASPs there are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if there are many ARC providers, let's say.
Yeah, but that's serious. If you assume, this is a very optimistic assumption, but a market equilibrium in which you have a block which is full with, let's say, let's assume no discount, 1 megabyte of ARC openings and closing, that would be a very stable situation in which most of the pressure will be removed to the second layers and the block will still be full. Now, that's an ambitious assumption because of economies of scale of liquidity of ARC, but maybe I also think that these things that we mentioned, Lightning channels, not just Riapun, but also older ones, like the ones Peter was working on, the Spielman, these channels plus ARC can interact in a way that may still make something efficient in terms of filling a block by serving all the economy altogether. Maybe it's over-optimistic, but it's not crazy.
Well, we've got 30 seconds left, so I guess any last comment that you guys want to make?
I'll make a very quick one, which is that the communists around the world are trying to put 5% per year capital taxes on unrealized, just on your net worth in general. I mean, if you wind up paying like 0.1% per year to go keep your Bitcoin secure, who cares? Like it'd be just fine.
Okay,
Hopefully we don't need it, but it's easy to do if we do.
Yeah, maybe it'll be patronage. There'll be people who just pay that way. But anyway, that's all we have time for.
Just one quick
Quickly make
thing.
a last point.
I will, so just like I said last year, I won the debate with my position. I will admit defeat with Peter's position this year. So, okay.
Well, I think it's all going to be okay. Thank you, everybody. Please put your hands together for Peter and Giacomo.